The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. Picture this, a 13-year-old boy, barely tall enough to see over most men's shoulders, standing face to face with a grown warrior. Not just any warrior, mind you, but Arima Kihei, a respected strategist who'd spent years mastering his craft. The smart money wasn't on the kid. But Miyamoto Musashi wasn't your average teenager. He had this fire burning inside him, the kind that makes you do crazy things, like challenge a master swordsman to a duel. And then, against all odds, he actually won. That victory was just the beginning. Over the next 16 years, Musashi went on an absolute tear across Japan. 60 duels. 60 victories. 0 losses. Not even a tie. Think about that for a second. That's like going through high school, never losing a single game, match, or competition, ever. Now here's where it gets interesting, and honestly, kinda beautiful. Most people with that kind of record would be strutting around, chest puffed out, convinced they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But at age 30, Musashi did something unexpected. He stopped and looked back at all those wins and thought, wait a minute, was I actually that good? Or did I just get lucky? Maybe he had natural talent. Maybe the heavens smiled on him. Or maybe, just maybe, everyone else kinda sucked. That moment of raw honesty, that willingness to question everything despite an undefeated record, that's what separates someone who's merely good from someone who becomes legendary. So what did he do? He spent the next 20 years not just fighting, but really digging deep, searching for the true essence of strategy. And at 50 years old, he finally cracked the code. The book we're diving into today is the result of that lifelong quest. Musashi wrote it in his final years, holed up alone in a cave on Mount Iwato. Not exactly the glamorous retirement most people dream of, but he wasn't interested in comfort. He was interested in leaving behind something that mattered. Here's the thing. This isn't just some dusty manual about sword fighting. For nearly 400 years, leaders, artists, and deep thinkers have treated this book like their secret weapon. It's a blueprint for how to think like a strategist, how to live with purpose, how to move through life with unshakable focus. So here's what I promise you. By the time we're done here, you're going to understand the philosophy of Japan's greatest swordsman. And more importantly, you're going to see how these ancient lessons apply to your life right now. Whether you're grinding through schoolwork, competing on the field, or chasing your own dreams in the quiet hours when nobody's watching. Let's jump in. So how does a guy like Musashi, after a lifetime of being basically unbeatable, start explaining his wisdom? Does he launch into some secret sword technique? Some mystical warrior move? Nope. He starts by talking about carpenters. I know. Stick with me here. Imagine a master carpenter. Someone who's not just good at hammering nails, but is actually in charge of building an entire temple or palace. Musashi says this person is the perfect model for understanding strategy. And when you think about it, it's genius. A great carpenter doesn't just show up and start building random stuff. Everything begins with a plan, a blueprint for the whole structure. They understand how buildings work, how nature works, what the finished product needs to accomplish. A strategist has to think the same way. You need a campaign plan, a clear vision of what victory actually looks like. But here's where it gets really interesting. A master carpenter knows their materials inside and out. They'll find a beautiful straight piece of timber with no knots and think, perfect. This is going to be a main pillar where everyone can see it. Then they'll find another piece that's strong but has a few imperfections and use it for inner pillars, where strength matters more than looks. Even that gnarly, knotted piece that looks kind of rough, that's got a place too. Hide it somewhere structural where its strength matters but nobody sees its flaws. And the weakest wood? That becomes scaffolding, then firewood. Nothing goes to waste. This is exactly how you need to think about people, Musashi says. Whether you're leading a team, working on a group project, or organizing literally anything, you've got to know what people are good at. The skilled folks work on the detailed stuff. The less experienced handle the foundation work. The apprentices do the simple but necessary tasks. You don't ask your newest team member to handle the most critical part, and you don't waste your star player's time on grunt work. When you get this right, when you truly understand your people and use everyone's strengths wisely, the results are always impressive. This simple idea about carpentry is actually the foundation of Musashi's entire philosophy. Strategy isn't some mystical, aggressive thing. It's a craft. It's practical. And just like a carpenter has to master their basic tools before building a temple, you have to master your fundamentals before doing anything great. Musashi called this foundation the groundwork. It's the first of his 5 scrolls because you can't build anything lasting without solid ground. For him, being a warrior meant mastering both the pen and the sword. You couldn't just be strong. You had to be smart. You couldn't just act. You had to think and reflect. He noticed too many people in his time focusing on what he called the flower instead of the nut. They learned flashy techniques to look impressive, showing off for profit and fame. But Musashi warns that, quote, immature strategy is the cause of grief. Real strategy is about substance, not style. It's about overcoming your opponent, sure, but even more importantly, it's about overcoming yourself. He calls it the resolute acceptance of death. Now that sounds intense, and it is. But what he really means is total commitment to the moment, without fear holding you back. It's about being so dedicated to your path that you're prepared to give everything. When you reach that level of commitment, your actions become pure, decisive, and powerful. Once you've got that solid ground beneath you, Musashi wants you to change your entire state of mind. He wants you to become like water. This is the lesson of his second scroll, the Water Book. Why water? Because water is the ultimate adapter. It has no fixed shape. Pour it in a cup, it becomes the cup. Pour it in a river, it flows like a river. It can be a gentle trickle or a raging ocean, but its essence never changes. That's how your spirit needs to be in strategy and in life. He says both in fighting and in everyday life you should be determined though calm. This balance is crucial. Not tense, but not reckless either. Your spirit should be settled, yet always ready to move. He warns against being over-spirited, which is weak, and under-spirited, which is also weak. The sweet spot is centered, calm, and powerful readiness. This inner state shows up in your physical presence too. Your stance should be your everyday stance. You don't adopt some weird, artificial fighting pose. How you stand in combat should feel as natural as how you stand when you're just walking around, and vice versa. Your head is up, shoulders are down, and your core is braced. You're rooted but relaxed. From this stance you learn how to really see. And for Musashi, the gaze is everything. He calls it the twofold gaze, perception and sight. Sight is what your eyes physically see, your opponent's sword, his hands, his feet. But if you focus only on these small movements, you'll get distracted and easily fooled. Perception is different. Perception is seeing with your spirit. It's the ability to see the whole situation, your opponent's intention, his rhythm, his state of mind. Musashi says your gaze should be large and broad. You see distant things as if they were close, and take a distanced view of things right in front of you. You're seeing the whole forest, not just individual trees. This flexible, water-like spirit is what allows a strategist to defeat not just one person but 10 million. Because, as Musashi realized, the principle is the same. The spirit of defeating a man is the same for 10 million men. A strategist makes small things into big things, like building a giant Buddha statue from a 1-foot model. Once you understand the core principle, you can apply it on any scale. This is the heart of his teaching, having one thing to know 10,000 things. This is powerful stuff. It means if you truly master one thing, one instrument, one subject, one sport, not just the techniques but the deep principles behind it, you gain an understanding you can apply everywhere else in your life. Now that we've established the solid ground and the fluid spirit, We're moving into the heart of conflict. We're entering the fire book. Fire, Musashi says, is the spirit of fighting. It's fierce whether it's a tiny flame or a massive inferno. This is where he gets into the practical side of battle, but again, every physical lesson is really about training your mind. One of the biggest ideas in the fire book is taking the initiative. You can't be passive. You can't just sit around waiting for things to happen. A strategist must always control the rhythm of the engagement. Musashi outlines 3 ways to do this, 3 ways to forestall the enemy. The first is straightforward, attack first. This is called Ken no Sen. You spot an opening and move in with calm, decisive speed. The second is more subtle. It's called Tai no Sen, waiting for the initiative. This doesn't mean being passive. It means when your opponent attacks, you remain completely undisturbed. You might even look weak to draw them in. But just as they reach you, at the exact moment they commit, you explode into action, using the disorder in their timing to win. It's like a master boxer letting their opponent tire themselves out, then landing the perfect counterpunch. The third method is probably the most advanced. It's called Tai no Sen. This is when you and your opponent attack at the same time. As they move, you flow with their movement, but you're just a fraction of a second quicker. Your spirit is just a bit calmer, and you redirect their own momentum to defeat them. Underlying all 3 is one key principle. You must see through your opponent's intentions and grasp their strategy before they can execute it. Musashi uses this wonderful phrase for it. He calls it holding down a pillow. Imagine trying to hold a pillow down. The moment you let up, it springs back. The idea is to never let your opponent's head rise. You suppress their useful actions, but allow their useless ones. When they're about to attack, you check their attack at the syllable at. When they're about to jump, you check their jump at the syllable ju. You're always one step ahead, not just reacting to their moves, but smothering their intentions before they even become actions. This proactive mindset applies to everything. Musashi talks about crossing at a ford. A ford is a shallow spot in a river where you can cross. In life and in any contest, there are moments of opportunity, strategic crossings. A wise captain knows their route, the condition of their ship, and waits for favorable wind. When conditions are right, they set sail, even if others stay in the harbor. Crossing at a ford means knowing your own strengths, spotting your opponent's weaknesses, and attacking that weak point to gain an advantage. This is how you win, not by being stronger or faster in every situation, but by being smarter. You use the terrain. You stand with the sun at your back so it blinds your opponent. You chase them into awkward places with bad footing where their skill doesn't matter. You don't fight their strengths. You make them irrelevant. You also have to understand rhythm and collapse. Musashi notes that everything, houses, bodies, armies, can collapse when its rhythm gets messed up. In a fight, an opponent will eventually lose their timing and start falling apart. A true strategist sees this collapse the moment it begins and pursues relentlessly, giving no chance to recover. If you let that moment pass, they might regain their composure, and you won't get another chance. All these ideas from the fire book, forestalling, holding down the pillow, crossing at a ford, exploiting collapse, are about controlling the mental and physical space of conflict. It's dynamic, intelligent, and deeply psychological. But how can you truly know yourself if you don't understand others? This is the central question of the 4th scroll, the Wind Book. By wind, Musashi means the traditions and habits of other schools of strategy. In this section, he critiques the common flaws he saw in other warriors and their teachings. He's not doing this to be arrogant, but to teach a vital lesson. You must study your competition, understand their assumptions, and see their limitations. If you don't know others, you can't truly know yourself. For example, he saw schools obsessed with using extra-long swords. Their whole strategy was based on keeping enemies at a distance. Musashi saw this as weakness. It showed a spirit dependent on a single tool, a fear of getting close. What happens, he asks, When you're forced to fight in a tight space or armed with only a short sword, your entire strategy crumbles. Being fixated on one specific weapon is a sign of narrow thinking. He also criticizes schools that fixate on speed. Speed, he says, isn't the true way. A real master never looks fast or hurried. They move with deliberate rhythm that's always appropriate to the situation. Beginners try to rush, and because they're rushing, their rhythm becomes chaotic and messy. But a skilled person is always deliberate, never offbeat. Trying to be fast just for the sake of being fast is a trap. It makes you predictable and easily influenced by your opponent. Another flaw he points out is obsession with footwork. Some schools taught jumping feet, floating feet, all sorts of nimble, fancy steps. Musashi disliked them all. Why? Because the way must be walked firmly. You walk as you normally do on the street, with your feet always under control. What good is a fancy jumping step if you're fighting on swampy ground or a narrow, rocky path? Real strategy works everywhere, in any condition. It doesn't depend on ideal circumstances. By studying these other schools, Musashi isn't just pointing out their flaws. He's teaching us to look for dogma in our own thinking. Where are we relying on a single tool? Where are we obsessed with one attribute, like speed or strength, at the expense of true, adaptable strategy? The Wind Book is a mirror. It forces us to examine the traditions and habits we take for granted and ask if they truly serve us on the path to victory. And this leads us to the final, most profound scroll, the Book of the Void. After all the lessons on grounding, adaptability, combat, and knowing others, what's left? Nothing. The void. But this isn't negative emptiness. For Musashi, the void is the ultimate state of mind, where the true way is realized. The void is that which has no beginning and no end. It's a state of being where your spirit isn't clouded by even the slightest confusion. Think about it this way. When you first learn to drive, you're hyper-aware of everything. Your hands grip the wheel tight. Your eyes dart between mirrors. Your mind races. Check blind spot. Signal. Accelerate. Brake. It's clumsy, conscious effort. But after years of practice, you just drive. You merge onto the freeway while having a conversation, perfectly in tune with traffic flow. You're no longer thinking about driving. You've reached unconscious competence. Your actions are natural, spontaneous, and correct. This is the spirit of the void. It's when you've practiced and trained so diligently, day after day, hour after hour, that the way of strategy becomes part of you. You no longer need to think about the principles of water, fire, or wind. You simply embody them. You can respond naturally and strike naturally because you're moving in perfect harmony with the rhythm of the situation. Musashi says people often mistake confusion for the void. They think what they don't understand must be some deep, mystical secret. But that's not it. The true void isn't confusion. It's perfect clarity. It's a spirit of nothingness because there's no ego, no fear, no hesitation, only pure, direct action. This is the destination of the warrior's journey. It begins on the solid ground of fundamentals. It flows with the adaptability of water. It burns with the intensity of fire. It learns from the winds of other traditions. And finally, it arrives at the quiet, powerful clarity of the void. To help his students reach this place, Musashi left behind 9 simple principles to live by. They're the essence of the ground book, but they lead directly to the void. 1. Do not think dishonestly. 2. The way is in training. 3. Become acquainted with every art. 4. Know the ways of all professions. 5. Distinguish between gain and loss in worldly matters. 6. Develop intuitive judgment and understanding for everything. 7. Perceive those things which cannot be seen. 8. Pay attention even to trifles. 9. Do nothing which is of no use. These aren't rules for fighting, they're rules for living, and that's Musashi's ultimate secret. The way of strategy isn't something you do, it's something you become. When you peel back the layers of Miyamoto Musashi's work, you realize you're not holding a book about swords and combat. You're holding a guide to life. Its power lies in translating the highest stakes imaginable, a life-or-death duel, into a philosophy for navigating our own, much quieter battles. The most powerful lesson for me is the journey from technician to strategist. So many of us get stuck at the level of technique. We learn the formulas in math class, the specific moves in a sport, the right words to say in a presentation. We become decent technicians. But Musashi is pushing us to go deeper. He's asking us to become strategists in our own lives. A strategist doesn't just know the moves, they understand the entire game. They see the underlying principles, the rhythm of the situation, the psychology of the opponent, and themselves. They have a plan, like the master carpenter, but their spirit is fluid, like water, ready to adapt to whatever comes. This philosophy is more relevant today than ever. We live in a world that encourages distraction and superficiality. Musashi's way is a powerful antidote. It calls for deep focus, constant training, and unwavering commitment to self-mastery. His critique of those who chase the flower instead of the nut perfectly describes so much of modern culture, which often values appearance over substance. So how can we bring this ancient wisdom into our modern lives? Here are a few simple ways to start walking Musashi's path today. First, practice what he calls making your everyday stance your combat stance. This doesn't mean being tense all the time, it means the opposite. It means bringing calm, centered awareness to everything you do. When you're doing homework, be fully present. When you're talking to a friend, truly listen. Eliminate the distinction between practice and real life. Your life is the training ground. Be determined, though calm, in all things. Second, embrace the twofold way of the pen and sword. Whatever your chosen craft is, your sword, balance it with reflection and study, your pen. If you're an athlete, don't just train your body. Study the theory and strategy of your sport. If you're a student, don't just memorize facts. Reflect on what they mean and how they connect. Action combined with deep thought is the path to true mastery. Finally, live by Musashi's 9th principle, do nothing which is of no use. This is a powerful filter for your life. Look at your habits, your commitments, how you spend your time. Are you doing things that serve your purpose, that move you along your way? Or are you getting caught up in meaningless stuff? This isn't about becoming a robot. It's about being intentional. It's about making sure your actions align with your goals, so that your life itself becomes a work of masterful strategy. The journey of the warrior is long. As Musashi said, step by step walk the 1,000-mile road. Victory isn't just a single event, it's a daily practice. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. It begins, always, with mastering yourself. That was a summary of the Book of 5 Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. We've touched on the great lessons today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you walk the path yourself. The true magic happens in those quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This overview is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time and attention. If anything we've talked about has sparked a fire in you, grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see yourself and the world around you. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Your support helps us continue this mission of learning and growing together. Thank you for joining me.